Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramona, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve, Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. Doing business and life with a purpose. Serving others, yes, achieving success. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. We created this show for you because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. How will you serve today, and what impact will you create today with that service? I want you to think about that as you listen to this absolutely incredible guest I have today. I'm super excited. Real quick, thank my two sponsors, brainshare.us, drive business success and sustainability with BrainShare Business Mentors, where your business flourishes and your vision comes to life. You can check out the link in the show notes, as well as pitchdb.com. Have the opportunity to guest on over 3 million podcasts or speak at over 11,000 different conferences and much, much more. Imagine building your thought leader platform with an incredible opportunity to show who you are. With that being said, we talk about impact. We talk about making a difference. It's said a lot, and I don't think it's said enough, but this guest today has made a huge impact for many years. She's so young. I don't know how she's done it for many years, but she's going to tell us. Dr. Susie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for having all of us on this show, because it takes a village, man, to get the word out there.
Amen. I love that. What's the 3 lessons you learned throughout your life and career, and that's helped you become the person today? Because I think usually people say 1 lesson. I'm interested because you said 3.
Yes. Well, I would say the first thing is not having a plan when I started. I'm naturally a creative, right? And I could create anything. I could create money. I could create business. I could create clients. But I could only get to a certain level and a certain point. And then everything would kind of collapse because I didn't have a strategy outside of me being the sole creator. And so learning early on the business side, if we look at, Steve, 15% of our financial success is based on our technical ability. The other 85% is sales, marketing, operations, and finance. And so putting that plan together was the first lesson of going, God, that's not the fun part. That wasn't the fun part for me back in the day. Now it's the fun part for me because I had to master it. But in the beginning, I was great at my technician. I was great in my vocation, right? Back then, almost 40 years ago, which is bananas, I was a hairdresser. And so learning to be a hairdresser, and I was doing $250,000 a year, working 3 days a week as a technician, and wanted to grow beyond that and didn't know how to do it. The second lesson was it's about the people. Whether you have team members, it's about relationships. And you know that, Steve, you're a master at it. Building those relationships, leveraging those relationships. I was just on a call with Charles Bird before this call. He's an affiliate master, and just us networking and sharing, high level leads with each other. I mean, that's powerful. And we've known each other for 6-7 years, all through Zoom, right? Never have met face to face, but have an amazing relationship. So the relationships, that's the saying that says your net worth is determined by your network, right? The people in your tribe and community. And I had to learn that the hard way. And then the third thing, which was painful. I know we all have experienced this. If you have any kind of entrepreneur badge, right? I said every time you have a hard lesson, it's like your stripes, you're a colonel. I'm a colonel now. I don't know the highest level, right? But I'm up there for sure. And it was the financial planning, right? In 2007, when the market crashed, I crashed. We were heavily leveraged in real estate. We had a real estate development company, real estate investment company. And when everything crashed, I crashed. And Steve, oh, we lost about $10 million. And it felt like overnight. And I remember being on the floor crying, going, why? I was a good student. I was a good steward. I had coaches. I listened. I was coachable. And I was a big risk taker. And that had worked well for me. But now I'm 45 doing these risk taking, right? That's a different ball game than when you're in your 20s and 30s, because you have this runway. And I remember crying, just like, why? And not like a pity party, Steve. It wasn't pity party. It was, why me? Why now? And my marriage of 17 years, he moved away and moved to Singapore. Steve, I must chase him when I moved him far away.
Yeah.
And I heard this voice in my head, Steve, that said, get up. I will never leave you. I'll never forsake you. Get up and go to the people. Go tell them. I remember that conversation in my head, like, I am not telling people I just lost all my money. And Steve, I started sharing with people the lessons I've learned inside of that, which a big lesson was finances and a budget and a strategy and the long game, not just the short game. I was playing the short game. I had a long-term strategy and that was safe, but my short game didn't match my long game. And so I got my honey handed to me, Steve.
Yeah.
The great thing is because I had it took me 20 years to understand money and understand the system. It didn't take me 20 years to rebuild it, because immediately I went back into real estate, right? As soon as I could clean up my mess and get rid of the short sales and get rid of the foreclosure and, clean all my mess up, because I had to do all that, which was humbling. Then I just went right back into real estate, used the money I earned to invest in my growth strategy. And so when you understand your skill, when you understand your genius, I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you can't. You've got to look at, what did I learn and how do I grow? What did I learn? How did I grow? And how can I help my community not make those same mistakes, right? From being sued to filing bankruptcy to losing your money to building millions to that's business. And everybody talks about it conceptually. You gotta fail, but man, when you fail, kills me.
Yep. Yeah. And you will fail. That's unfortunately, but that's a good thing. Now, you're a profit coach, and I love that story because I know my dad always used to tell me, don't recreate the wheel. So you learn the wheel of failure, especially tragically. Now you can share that with others and coach others, right?
Right. And my newest book, this is my 10th book, Power Your Profit. It was published by Simon & Schuster. And I share that because that means it's a real book, right? They don't give out book deals anymore, right? You've got to really have your stuff together. And I wrote this book particular, Steve, because it was like, what did I do to build 10 multi-million-dollar companies into $10 million companies? There's a system. And because I'm a creative, I knew, and going back to being a hairdresser, there was a system for cutting, there was a system for coloring, there was a system for how we did our procedures. I'm like, well, what's the procedure of money? What's the procedure of business? What's the procedure of selling? How do I do that systemically? And so the book isn't written in a logical manner, although it is, right? But if you suck at sales, go to chapter 8, math is money, money is money, math is money, money is fun, right? If you need my $100,000 script, go to chapter 6. I give you my script where I close $100,000 deals that I've been using for 25 years, right? You follow the system works. So wherever you're at inside your business, just go to that chapter and then go back to whatever you need, because that's what I needed in building a business, right? There wasn't one place to say, how do I do this thing called business? I had to go, I met Steve, and Steve taught me about podcasting, or Steve taught me how to get on this show. And then I went to Charles, and Charles taught me how to build those relationships. And then I went to, a business finance class and learned that. And so I'm like, where can I get it? Like someone who had done it, right, over and over and over again in one place. My editor, when I first wrote the book, she's like, Susie, there's like 10 books here. We got to scale it back. I'm like, wait, there's more. There's more.
That's powerful. So let me ask you, going back in the hair technician days, well, what you know now, would you make more than $250,000 a year?
Absolutely. Right now, I didn't know what I didn't know then, and I was figuring it out while I was building it. The caveat was I was a single mom raising two little kids, so I didn't have an option not to make money. Right? Living in Southern California, I had no alimony, no child support. I had to make money. That was a blessing and a curse, right? Because there wasn't an option. I was an entrepreneur, and I'm like, if I don't do something, I don't get paid. So it had me think outside of the box, sooner, quicker, faster, right? Again, I didn't have strategy. I was kind of pulling it out of my hiney, figuring it out. Well, how about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? Right? And along the way, picking up nuggets. If I got sued, I went to a business law class. If I needed to figure out my, tax strategy, I went to a tax strategy class. If I went to and back in the day, there wasn't the internet. Right. I'm aging myself, Steve. Right. So we had to go to bookstores and libraries and so we didn't have the information at our fingertips. We had to go find it. And so I remember being so broke that I would go to the bookstore, find the newest, greatest trend or the newest, hottest influencer, guru, expert. And then I would go to the used bookstore and find that same book that now I'm going to spend 50 cents versus spending $20, because $20 was the difference between my kids eating, meat versus my kids just having top ramen. So it taught me to be innovative. It taught me how to be scrappy. It taught me how to think outside of the box. Right. So absolutely, I would have done more, but it also earned me my stripes in business, my stripes in that tenacity, perseverance. And there was many times I wanted to quit. And I think every entrepreneur feels that, like, why? I remember owning a salon. We had $1 million salon and spa. We were the top 1% in the nation, top 10% in the world. And I personally was not making a lot of money because most of my money was going back into the business. And I remember crying, going, I could work at McDonald's and make more money making in this $1 million business. And that struggle had me look at, well, how can you have $1 million business and have less than 5% profit? Because the profit is what we as business owners are being paid on. Yes, you'll have your paycheck, but that's not a payment, that's survival. To go, wait, business is supposed to provide us freedom. A business is supposed to provide us a lifestyle that a job cannot. And so that gave me the wake-up call, having that $1 million business, but still being broken to go, this sucks. This is not fun.
It doesn't sound fun either, just to be honest. I get goosebumps like, oh my gosh.
But nobody tells you it. Everybody's like, oh, own $1 million business. There's only 1% of entrepreneurs, Steve, hit the $1 million mark. Out of the 1% that hit the $1 million mark, the owners are not paying themselves a proper paycheck for the job that they're doing. So 90% of owners, 90% out of that 1% are not paying them a comparable salary. So the numbers are skewed. When you start digging in deep to go, who cares you have $1 million business if you're spending $1.1 million, $1.2 million, $1 million, and you're not making any money? So that's where my love for money came in, my love for simplifying it. I'm not a CPA. I do have my DR in front of my name, but that's all in business and strategy. I'm not an accountant. I've had to learn and put spreadsheets together for me because I was horrible at math. When I first started business, Steve, I was so bad at math that I would have to close my checking account and open a new one because I could not balance it. My banker's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't balance it. And I'm bouncing checks everywhere. She's like, honey, let's get you on QuickBooks. I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Another thing throwing the wrench in the whole thing.
Like, oh, you need this. But the grace, right? And me being vulnerable, ignorance on fire, really, Steve, let's call it what it was. Right. Ignorance on fire and just saying, I can't balance this checkbook. It was so confusing to me. And then why do you have to have two P&Ls, right? One accrual, one cash, and like one said I had money, one said I didn't. I'm like, I don't like this. I just want this one. They're like, you can't just use that one. But that one says I have money.
Yeah, I like the money.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too, the big lesson of the whole thing is that you never quit, because you could have. And like you said, you thought about it a number of times.
Yeah, I could have quit and I couldn't quit at the same time, because what else would I do? Right. I was in this entrepreneur space. Now, fast forward 15 years, I sold my business for millions, Steve. millions. And I had a non-compete. And I sold it to Ritker's Publishing, Thompson Learning. And I remember thinking, well, what do I do now? Because I couldn't go back into the beauty space. I'd built the largest training and development company in the beauty space, and this publisher bought it for the beauty industry, and I couldn't work back in the industry. When the market collapsed and I collapsed, all of a sudden, I had my identity wrapped around this brand that I built, not the expertise that I had built. And I had to look at, like, well, who am I now if I'm not this person? I would walk into any room and everybody knew me. I was an icon in the industry. I walk into a networking meeting or some other, the entrepreneurial space, and they're like, who are you? And why should we listen? I was like, what do you mean, who am I? Don't you know who I am?
Yeah.
And
That's a good point.
Rebuild your
Yeah.
brand. And I think our businesses now, you're constantly having to rebuild, reinvent, rebuild, reinvent, rebuild, reinvent. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, right, somebody else is going to come along and take your market share. As entrepreneurs, we always have to be and I come from, how do I serve my client? I love that this is all about being a servant heart podcast. How do I serve my client? How do I make it easier? And the things that I created for my clients were just things I wish I would have had. I wish somebody would have told me. I wish they would have simplified it for me versus creating this mystique. I think so many marketers and so many gurus, it's that whole, charlatan of it's great in theory, but it doesn't work in reality. And so I'm an advocate of, let me just show you how I did it. Let me show you what the mistakes I've made. Let me teach from my valley. I'll talk about my mountaintop because people need that. But where I learned my hard lessons were in the valley. And the valley is a dark place. The valley is lonely. The valley is cold, right? And if we stand together as entrepreneurs to go, how do we stick together when we're in the valley? I don't want you buying real estate there in the valley. I want you to come out and see the light of day. But you don't have to do it alone when you find your right community. Like Steve's community is all about finding servant heart leaders, which that's what you want, is to go, how do I help Steve win? How does Steve help Susie win? And the clients that are attracted to it. Not everybody loves to do business that way. I believe, Steve, and I'm going to call it God. Everybody can call it whatever else, but
Amen.
I believe that my gift from God is my life. That's my gift. My gift back to God is, what have I done with my life and what's the difference that I made? If I keep it to myself, if I hog this experience, then I'm just being selfish. And that's not the point. The point is, how do I take my brother Steve? How do I take my sister Ann? How do I take my children and give them the skill set so that they can do it on their own? If they have to rely on me, I have not done my job. I don't want you relying on me. I want you to grow and surpass me. I want to be your biggest fan, your biggest cheerleader, right? To make your business win as much as mine has. I don't have to be the end all be all.
You haven't said selling once. That's why I love what you do. You haven't said sales or selling once in this whole conversation, and you're winning. You're successful.
Right. When you serve, you never sell. And I always tell my clients, because they hate selling. I hate selling. The minute you have to sell is the minute you get icky. The minute I'm serving and just trying to figure out, let me find Steve's need, find the need, fill the need, find the need, fill the need. If it's not me, it might be Steve. If it's not me, it might be Charles. If it's not me, it might be Carrie. To go, what does the client need? And there's so much business, Steve. So much business that comes around. I don't have to be selfish. Now, sometimes it hurts if I don't get the sale or close a sale, but I promise you, man's rejection is God's protection. Every time I don't get it, or every time something happened, a contract ended or a breakdown occurred, even my marriage of 17 years, right? Man's rejection is God's protection. You see the lesson on the other side. So I always have to remember, okay, this is for the good. I don't know what it is right now. I have to surrender and trust. And I always ask, what did I learn? What did I learn? What did I learn?
Surrender and trust is so good. I say, you don't know how, when, or where, just have faith. Just serve the hell out of people. We were just talking about that on a podcast I was just on, and you're absolutely right. Build that network and grow with value.
I will say, Steve, though, because some people, one of my clients was Lisa Nichols, and I don't know if you're familiar with who she is, but she was the #1 rated secret teacher. I took her business from 80,000 to 10 million, grew that company. We took her company public. We did so many amazing things together. And so her philosophy was, prosperity thinking, that whole attraction factor. And people would call us and say, Susie, I'm doing everything Lisa said. I'm meditating. I have a vision board. I go to my mailbox. There's no checks. I'm like, well, what action are you doing? They're like, what? You have to take action. You can't just visualize. You can't just meditate. You can't just, that's in conjunction with the radical action that you're taking. That's the planning. That's the financial planning. That's, you got to pick up the phone. People are like, I'm just going to send an email. No, you got to pick up the phone. You got to go belly to belly, heart to heart. You got to be in your community. You got to serve first, right? Nobody wants a gimme. Everyone just will gimme, 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 gimme. Like, ew, nobody wants that. Right? To go, what are you talking to people? Are you talking to your ideal qualified client? That's action. Action is the antidote for despair. Not sitting on your couch, woo-ha, they're coming, woo-ha, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And everything you're saying is so positive and cheery. And, you know, people are thinking, oh, yeah, it's so great what Susie does. She's just killing and all this. But I know you had challenges. We all do. What was your biggest challenge that people can learn from today?
Oh, just one, Steve? I have so many. Well, I told you the money one. That was pretty darn
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
I think the second one that defined me as a woman was my children are African American. And I got to see firsthand the racism, the judgment, the hardship that my daughters have faced because of the color of their skin. And I had to choose to be a better mom. I have to sit in other people's shoes. To be a better mom, I had to look at where was I bringing my children? What kind of cultures were I bringing them in? And I realized I was surrounding them with all white people. My daughter was 4 years old and she was sitting in the back seat of my car, Steve, and she's a little brown girl, right? And this is, I'm aging myself now. You said I look so young, but I'm aging myself. This is the day we used to wear pantyhose. And so I had some white pantyhose in my back seat, and she puts the pantyhose on her arm. She goes, Mommy, look, now I'm pretty just like you. I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell to the no. Right. And it was a wake-up call to go, wait, what am I teaching my children? That all they were seeing, my husband was African American, but I'm white. My girlfriends are white. Their community is white. He just had a white community. I looked at their school. There was 2 children of color. There was an Asian child and an African American child, and my children. No teachers of influence of color, any color, right? It was a white Christian school, right? Because I wanted my kids to have the best education. And sometimes you have to look at, well, how am I serving my market? I have a huge diverse community, men, women, ethnicities, right? Because I've learned that when you can accept people for who they are and meet them where they're at, wherever they're at, but you have to understand the journey that they've gone through. I had to understand the journey that my children are going through, and I had to be a different parent. Parenting is hard anyways. And then you throw that into the mix, right? And you throw how our society, our community, when they talk about white privilege and they talk about, it's not necessarily privilege, there's just ignorance. You don't even know that you don't even know what you're saying, that you're excluding culture, you're excluding people. And I was putting my children in that. And so that affected my business. I remember my husband walking into the salon one day, and I had a client. I knew she was racist, and she always was saying little remarks. And she comes in, my husband comes in, he's like, hey, baby. And he kisses me, and her face just went white. Never saw her again. And I'm like, wow.
Wow.
Like, we talk about racism, but when you experience firsthand, you know, from going to restaurants with my girlfriend, Lisa Nichols, and the waiter being grossly rude to her and so kind to me. Oh, I was so mad. I'm like, we are not eating here. She goes, girl, we are eating here. I'm starving. Like, I just want to wake us up. Right. Yeah. And it takes all of us to be aware. It takes all of us to spread God's love, to spread business love, right? Business is just an extension of how we serve the world, right? Yeah. I was lucky enough that everything I went into, I love doing it, and love figuring out how do I be inclusive inside of my communities, you know? So I think, although, you know, the business one was hard, really the personal one of seeing how we all affect consciously and unconsciously to be responsible for what are the words that are coming out of our mouth.
Yeah, and the kids thing is power. That's an incredible story. I'm glad you brought love in business, because it's not, and we're running to the end of the time, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because I talk about that too with entrepreneurs. I can love my partners. I can love my guests. It's okay. It's not, it's not infatuation love. It's a love that serve. A
Yeah, like
servant
an
heart is
agape
gonna have.
love. Yeah, it's an agape
Thank you.
love.
That's the word I was thinking of. Real quick, name of your book again?
It's called Power Your Profits. You can get it on our site at Susie Carder, CARD is in dinero, dollar, delicious, ER.
I love it. And your podcast?
Is called Power Your Profits. You can go to our website and you have a link to our podcast, a link to the book. Anything that you need. We have an assessment that you can take. I love assessments, right? I'm an assessment junkie, to go, where am I at in my business? And I give you a free business assessment to look at where are the holes inside my business. Whether you use me or not, it's important to reevaluate your business every quarter, every year. Am I on target? Am I on track? Where's the holes in my businesses? And if you're growing business, right, Steve, there'll always be holes. There's holes in my business right now, because the bigger you play, the bigger the breakdown. I want people to hear that. The bigger you play, the bigger the breakdown. If you're not having breakdowns, Steve, you're not playing big enough.
Oh, it's what a way to end the show. Is there any other way people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, go to our website, susiecarder.com. Reach out to me there. On all our social handles is my name, Susie Carder, CAR again, D as in dollar, delicious, dinero, ER. And we can start building a relationship and see if I'm the right person to help you. And here's the deal, Steve. If I can't help you, I have such an amazing network that I guarantee you, I know somebody who can help you, or they can get you to the person that can help you.
Your new nickname, Delicious Profit Girl. That's what I love. That's
I will be the delicious profit girl.
Yes, you will. Thank you again. This is
Dr. Delicious. Let's do Dr. Delicious.
Dr. Delicious Profit Girl. There we go. I love it. I'm going to write that down. We'll get that to you. Thanks again. This has been incredible. It's been an incredible show. Audience, do me a favor. There's so many notes I've written here. Take this podcast. We'd love for you to watch and listen to the whole podcast. But there's a forward and reverse button for a reason. You might take the 20 to 26 minutes and go, I got to listen to this over and over. If it changes your life, if it's a game changer and moves you, me and Dr. Carter are going to be so excited that it changed you. If the whole thing works for you too, but we want this to benefit you. It's not all about listening to us talk. We want to motivate, inspire, and educate you. She did all three of those. And when you listen to this or parts of it, that'll happen. Don't forget about my TV show, Together We Serve, every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Hey, how about wearing Doing Business with a Servant's Heart message on your chest, your head, hats, hoodies, shirts? You can get those too in our show notes. Click on the link and share this wonderful message. And me and Dr. Susie Carder, or Susie, I want to call her, and me, thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart.